All right, my friends, if you do not have your reading book out, please push pause, grab it, and open up to page 279 so we can read The Goat in the Rug together. All right. The title of our story is The Goat in the Rug by Geraldine, as told to Charles L. Blood and Martin Link, illustrated by Nancy Winslow Parker. Our essential question this week is, how is art connected to the past? Let's take a quick picture walk through our story. So pause your video and take a picture walk, looking carefully at each of the illustrations, and think about our essential question. Push pause while you do this and come back to me and push play when you're ready. As I previewed the selection, I saw a Navajo rug weaver going through the steps of making a rug. I know narrative nonfiction gives facts about a topic, as we discussed on Monday. I will read this selection to learn facts about how to weave a rug. My name is Geraldine, and I live near a place called Window Rock with my Navajo friend, Glen May. It's called Window Rock because it has a big round hole in it that looks like a window open to the sky. Glen May is called Glen May most of the time because it's easier to say than her Indian name, Glee Nazba. In English, that means something like female warrior, but she's really a Navajo weaver. I guess that's why, one day, she decided to weave me into a rug. All right, friends, let's pause here for a moment and think. Which character is Geraldine? If you said she's the goat, you're correct. Now, look back at this page. Can you find clues in the story that help you know? Well, the illustrations show two characters, a goat and a woman. Geraldine says she lives with her Navajo friend. So Geraldine is the goat. I remember it was a warm, sunny afternoon. Glen May had spent most of the morning sharpening a large pair of scissors. I had no idea what she was going to use them for, but it didn't take me long to find out. Let's think again. Why do you think the author chose to have Geraldine tell the story? Geraldine is a goat, so she will tell the story differently than a person would. This can make the story more interesting and funny. Before I knew what was happening, I was on the ground and Glen May was clipping off my wool in great long strands. It's called mohair, really. It didn't hurt at all, but I admit I kicked up my heels some. I'm very ticklish for a goat. I might have looked a little naked and silly afterwards, but my, did I feel nice and cool. So I decided to stick around and see what would happen next. How does the text help you know what Geraldine means when she says she kicked up her heels? Let's take a look. The text says Geraldine is ticklish. So I think she means that she squirmed around a lot. Why does Geraldine feel silly after Glen May clips her wool? Can you find the words in the text that help us know the details? Well, she is used to having a fluffy wool coat, and now she feels naked. So all of her fur coat is gone. The first thing Glen May did was chop up roots from a yucca plant. The roots made a soapy, rich lather when she mixed them with water. She washed my wool in the suds until it was clean and white. Let's stop reading here for a minute. Let's think about summarizing what we read. This is important, especially when we're reading nonfiction. because it helps us remember what we've read. Let's think what we know so far. A goat named Geraldine is telling what happens when her friend Glen May, a Navajo weaver, decides to weave a rug. Notice on page 383 it says the first thing. First tells us that we can sequence using this. First, Glen May clips Geraldine's wool and washes it. Let's continue reading to see what else happens. After that, a little bit of me, you might say, was hung up in the sun to dry. When my wool was dry, Glen May took out 2 large square combs with many teeth. By combing my wool between these carding combs, as they're called, she removed any bits of twigs or burrs and straightened out the fibers. She told me it helped make a smoother yarn for spinning. Friends, how do you think the wool might have gotten twigs or burrs in it? Now let's think. What is the effect of Geraldine's wool having twigs and burrs in it? Glen May has to comb the wool because of the twigs and burrs. So that is the effect. She has to comb the wool. Then Glen May carefully started to spin my wool, one small bundle at a time, into yarn. I was beginning to find out it takes a long while to make a Navajo rug. Again and again, Glen May twisted and pulled the wool. Then she spun it around a long, thin stick called a spindle. As she twisted and pulled and spun, the finer, stronger, and smoother the yarn became. Let's stop here. How is the step of combing the wool connected to the step of spinning the wool? Well, if Glen May didn't get the twigs and burrs out of the wool, she wouldn't be able to spin it into yarn. We are going to practice retelling and sequencing the events of what Glen May has done so far to make the rug as we move on through our slides. Let's continue reading. A few days later, Glen May and I went for a walk. She said we were going to find some special plants she would use to make dye. Why do you think Glen May wants to find plants to make a dye? Well, she will use the dye to add color to the wool from Geraldine. Look at the list in her hands. A long time ago, before you could just go to the store and buy different dyes, they would use lots of plants and berries to make the colors. I didn't know what dye meant, but it sounded like a picnic to me. I do love to eat plants. That's what got me into trouble. Friends, why do you think eating the plants will get Geraldine into trouble? Let's draw a conclusion. Think about the details you just read and what you know in your head. And let's read on to find out if you were right. While Glen May was out looking for more plants, I ate every one she had already collected in her bucket. The next day, Glen May made me stay home while she walked miles to a store. She said the dye she could buy wasn't the same as the kind she makes from plants, but since I'd made such a pig of myself, it would have to do. What went wrong with Glen May's plan to dye the wool? Yes, Geraldine ate the plants for the dye, so now Glen May has no dye. How does Glen May solve the problem? She goes to a store and buys some dyes. Let's read on to find out what happens next. I was really worried that she would still be angry with me when she got back. She wasn't, though, and pretty soon she had 3 big potfuls of dye boiling over a fire. Friends, why do you think Geraldine worried that Glen May would be angry with her when she got back from the store? Then I saw that Glen May had meant what Glen May had meant by dyeing. She dipped the white wool into one pot, and it turned pink. She dipped it in again. It turned a darker pink. By the time she'd finished dipping it in and out and hung it up to dry, it was a beautiful deep red. After that, she dyed some of my wool brown and some of it black. I couldn't help wondering if those plants I'd eaten would turn all of me the same colors. Let's draw a conclusion. Why does Geraldine think she'll turn red, brown, and black? Well, let's look at the text details. The text tells us that Glen May dyed some of the wool brown, black, and pink. She wondered, meaning Geraldine wondered, if those plants she'd eaten would turn her the same colors, because the plants that were used helped make the dye that those were colored that way. So we're going to think about that and what we know. When we eat things, do we turn colors? Well, would a goat know that? So why do you think Geraldine thinks she'll turn red, brown, and black? While I was worrying about that, Glen May started to make our rug. She took a ball of yarn and wrapped it around and around 2 poles. I lost count when she'd reached 300 wraps. I guess I was too busy thinking about what it would be like to be the only red, white, black, and brown goat at Window Rock. So what would happen if Glen May had skipped the step of using dyes in the process of making rugs? Why does Geraldine lose count when Glen May is wrapping the wool around the loom? Yes, 300 wraps is a lot to count. She's so busy worrying about turning colors from those plants she ate. It wasn't long before Glen May had finished wrapping. Then she hung the poles with the yarn on the big wood frame. It looked like a picture frame made of logs. She called it a loom. After a whole week of getting ready to weave, Glen May started. She began weaving at the bottom of the loom. Then one strand of yarn at a time, a rug started growing toward the top. A few strands of black, a few of brown, a few of red, in and out, back and forth, until in a few days the pattern of our rug was clear to see. Reread that first paragraph on page 293. How does the rhythm of the first 5 sentences help you feel what Glen May is doing? Well, repeating the words in and out and back and forth give the feeling of the back and forth motion of weaving the yarn in and out. Our rug grew very slowly, just as every Navajo weaver before her had done for hundreds and hundreds of years. Glen May formed a design that would never be duplicated. Why do you think Glen May's rug will never be duplicated? Then at last the weaving was finished, but not until I'd checked it quite thoroughly in front and in back did I let Glen May take our rug off the loom. There was a lot of me in that rug. I wanted to be sure it was perfect, and it was. Since then, my wool has grown almost long enough for Glen May and me to make another rug. I hope we do very soon, because you see, there aren't too many weavers like Glen May left among the Navajos. Friends, why do you think Navajo rugs are so special? How do you think Geraldine feels about the rug? And there's only one goat like me, Geraldine. Why do you think the author titled the story The Goat in the Rug? This is the true story of a weaver and her goat who lived in the Navajo Nation at Window Rock, Arizona. Now, do you think that the author of this story interviewed Geraldine? No, she wouldn't be able to do that because Geraldine is a goat. But if we look at the cover, it says The Goat in the Rug by Geraldine, as told to Charles L. Blood and Martin Link. Once again, although there were facts throughout this story, the authors made this more interesting by making it seem like the goat was telling the story from Geraldine's point of view. Great job, my friends. Now I want you to show me your understanding of sequencing and drawing conclusions on the next slides.